Better Buildings for Humans is powered by Advanced Glazings, makers of the Solera line of products. Solera is the leading glass glazing made specifically for architectural daylighting and with extreme insulation performance. Learn more at advancedglazings.com.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Better Buildings for Humans. This is the show where we talk about the impact that the built environment has on our health, our wellness, our happiness, and our productivity. And of course, we also talk about sustainable design as well. And I'm your host, Joe Menchefski, and I want to introduce you to a fellow podcaster. Heidi Ellsworth is with me here today. Heidi, welcome to the show.
Joe, thank you so much for having me. I am honored.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. As you probably know, I'm spending more and more of my time in the metal building world right now. So it's wonderful to have someone on the show who's knowledgeable and tied so closely to the industry by several podcasts. I thought I was ambitious, but you've got 3 on the go. Let's start by learning a little bit about you. Tell us about your background and the path that led you to the Roofers Coffee Shop, the metal coffee shop, and the coatings coffee shop.
Yes, the coffee shops is very exciting. Again, I'm Heidi Ellsworth. I've been in actually the roofing industry, Joe, for over 30 years. That's where I started out in Portland, Oregon, working for Malarkey Roofing, who make wonderful asphalt SBS modified shingles. And from there, started my own business, did marketing for the industry, and ended up with Carlisle Construction Materials, handling their marketing communications, really, from which point I went to EagleView, which if you haven't heard of EagleView out there, it is an amazing technology where they take aerial imagery and get exact roof measurements, roof and walls from the exterior. And so I was in charge of sales and marketing there. So a little bit of experience in the roofing industry throughout the years, but also in metal. I actually do a lot of freelance writing. I wrote for Metal Mag back in the day, a long time ago. And now, after EagleView, which is a technology company, which is not that, you don't see that much in the roofing industry until about 10 years ago. But after EagleView, my current business partner said, "Hey, can you come and help me? I want to really take the coffee shops." And at that point, it was Roofers Coffee Shop to the next level. And we started it actually in 2002, and I helped her launch it then, back when I had my ad agency. And then in 2015, we kind of did a new relaunch of this whole digital platform for the contractors. And Joe, it's just been taking off since then.
Apparently, that's amazing. 2002, you were doing a podcast?
We weren't doing a podcast. We were doing a website.
Okay.
So we launched a website called Roofers Coffee Shop, and it had classified ads, forums, news, toolbox talks, those kind of things, anything for a contractor. But the funny thing is, in 2002, there were a lot of roofing contractors who didn't even have a computer on their desk. So we were a little bit before our time, but there was this group of avid fans who, from the very beginning in 2002, were kind of called the band of brothers in the roofing industry, who were on the forums, were on the classified ads. And that really took us through, the recession. And in 2015, it was time to kind of create this new platform of the digital world. And that's when we started bringing in podcasts and multimedia and video and, social media, all the different channels that you have today with your digital offerings.
So, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Let's start with Roofers Coffee Shop. What is it that
Okay.
you're trying to achieve with that podcast?
So on Roofers Coffee Shop, the name of our podcast, our main podcast, is Roofing Road Trips. And it was to shine a light and to really show the how great the roofing industry is. So we interview manufacturers, distributors, contractors, consultants, you name it, about what they're doing in roofing, new initiatives about them. And we started out with Roofing Road Trips. Our first podcast was with Reed Ribble, who was the CEO of the National Roofing Contractors Association. And it was actually back in 2018 is when we launched that first podcast. And then we added A couple others. We actually have another one called Stories from the Roof, where we interview contractors about their story. That's all we want to hear is their story. And then as we grew, we added other multimedia that really aren't podcasts, but we have webinars. And then our award winning event is called Coffee Conversations. And that is an hour-long panel, interactive with the chat and talking about thought leadership in the roofing industry. And we do that twice a month. So a couple different forms of the podcast, but the whole idea for everything we do is to shine a light on how amazing the industry is, and to second, help educate the industry on what's happening, either with new products, initiatives, thought leadership, taking on challenges like the labor shortage, all of, sub crews, all those different things that are happening out there right now is really what we focus on with our podcast and multimedia events.
So similar with Metal Coffee Shop and Coatings Coffee Shop.
Exactly. We have Metalcast, which is our metal podcast. We also have Metal Talk, which is our webinars and our conversations. And then on coding, same thing, Coatings Cast and Coatings Talk. So we focus on different things for different industries.
Do you have a team, Heidi? I'm just so blown away. I'm doing one podcast and it takes up a tremendous amount of my week. And I was like, how is she doing this? Have you got other people that help you, or how are you pulling this off?
I have an amazing team. In fact,
Okay.
all I do is talk. The team is the one who really makes it all happen. And I'm not the only host. We have Karen Edwards, who has an immense amount of experience within the industry. She is one of our hosts. And then Megan Ellsworth, and same last name. Megan is also my daughter, and she is also our multimedia manager. So she's the producer of Coffee Conversations. She's also a host, and she does a number of the podcasts. And then she is the one who really works with the team to do all the production and bring it all together. So we have a multimedia team of really amazing, young, creative people who make our podcasts and multimedia events, videos, everything happen.
Okay, I don't feel so bad now. Now that is wonderful. I love that you're doing this. We have to talk about the roofing industry a little bit. How well positioned is the roofing industry to deal with the massive changes that we've had in building energy codes and more to come? How well are you guys ready for it? Is that industry ready for it?
They're ready. I am part of the National Roofing Contractors Association, go to their meetings. We're a One Voice member. And I get to talk to contractors across the country every single day. And they are having conversations about sustainability, about energy, about renewable energy constantly. And when you look at really a state like California with their requirements for the amount of insulation, they know that these kinds of building codes are going across the country. And most of the time, the roofing industry and these manufacturers, distributors, contractors, they're looking a little bit even further. So, Joe, when you think about now with the building codes and the energy codes of how much insulation is being required, they know that roof has to be durable enough not to condense the insulation, to make sure that it's long term. So you would see, we just had in the last month or so, we've had conversations on our coffee conversations about cover boards. Are we solar ready for our roofs? Do we have the right insulation? How do those decks work? And then on Coatings Coffee Shop, every week it feels like we have conversations about roof restoration and how are they building back up the energy codes, making sure that everything is working correctly. So really that energy, the insulation PIMA, which is one of our associations that focuses in on insulation and energy, they have been such great advocates on helping the industry stay in front of regulations and really kind of be a leader. So, and I'm not going to say it's everywhere, Joe. We always have some actors who try to take the cheap way, but overall the industry is just very in tune with energy and what we need to do, not just on energy savings, but on renewable energy and where we're going down that path.
I'm going to off script a little bit here because a question popped into my head while we were chatting. Embodied carbon. There's conversations that metal have high levels of embodied carbon compared to other materials, but metal also has the advantage of a really long lifespan. Is that a conversation that you guys have on a regular basis? And if so, what kind of, tell me a little bit about that conversation.
Yeah. So, yes, that is a conversation both at the NRCA, also at the Metal Construction Association. We have been meeting and they are talking about when it comes to metal buildings, the embedded carbon and what does that mean? How does it work? Because are we talking about everything has to be recycled? Are we talking about long life and durability? Are we talking about, the manufacturing, the transport, all of those different things? And I'll be honest, the whole carbon conversation is a challenge for I think all construction industries because you have the metal and you have the wood and you have insulation, you have chemicals, and there's all of these things that are playing around there. What's best? What's the right way to do it? And I'll be honest, I think that's still a huge conversation and will be for a while, but the contractors are working with the architects to really try to understand so that they at least have the right documentation through EPDs and that they are able to kind of say, okay, this is what was specified. This is what we're doing. Here's who we've brought from the manufacturers. And the manufacturers are leading the way. They are right in front of that to do it. But I will be honest that I think that's a little bit more of a challenge. You're coming a long way from the architects and the building owners or managers all the way to a sub trade like roofing or metal, where they are also having to say, okay, yeah, we're keeping up with all of this, all the environmental requirements.
So is the hardest part just keeping up with the current information, with the knowledge side of it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
There's
I
no big technical challenges. It's more just about like, there's a lot coming at you.
Yeah, there's a lot coming at you. And I think, for the most part, the manufacturers are trying to be really transparent and open, but there's also some who are not. And so when you get down to a contractor level, and that's kind of where I live with the coffee shops, we really focus on our contractors. But when you get down to the contractors, not only are they having to learn all of this and make sure that they're following the specs and the regulations correctly, but they also have to be sure to understand that this person's telling the truth. They aren't embellishing, they aren't greenwashing, they aren't
Right.
doing those kind of things. And so that always is a challenge as they're going through it. But that's why we have these great associations that really start looking at this and they're on the forefront that they're trying to get there. And the roofing industry, to be 100% honest, has been a little slow to get there, but in the last 10 years, it has been like leaps and bounds. Uh, Almost an evolution, a revolution within the roofing industry on really staying in front of these topics.
But what about the metal building side? Are you seeing, is it following the same trajectory? Is it slower, faster? What's your
I would
feeling
say the
there?
metal buildings, really looking at the metal construction overall, exterior wise, and
Right.
some interior, a little bit slower. And I think but like I said, I go to all the Metal Construction Association meetings and I'm just seeing them, they are in front of it, especially on the codes and the regulations. They just have such a strong technical team that they are staying in front of energy, environmental. And then, of course, they already have been so strong in the past with fire, hail resistance, all of those types of things that, yes, I would say they are. But I would also say that when you're looking at all the contractors, the metal building erectors, all of that's a lot to bring in to make sure that you're getting all the information through there. But between MCA, MBECA, and the Metal Building Manufacturers Association, they are all working very closely together to make it happen and to make sure that everyone's informed with the right information.
Yeah, cool. One of we recently, I worked with advanced glazings. We recently stepped into the metal building world. It's just growing so fast, and they
Yeah.
make such large buildings, which are actually easy to daylight. Like
Yeah.
large unobstructed interiors are actually really easy to bring lots of natural light into. So it's a really natural fit for us. I expected when I was going to get there, I would say daylight, and everybody would go, "You got to explain that to me. I don't know what that is." But it's been quite the opposite. I haven't met anybody who didn't understand daylighting and why it was important. So, it was very cool to see that the industry is very current on some of those human centric design factors. Let's
It,
talk about something very specific with regards to daylighting because it's something
yeah.
that I hear very different stories about, and that is skylights. How does the roofing industry feel about skylights? I mean, historically, I was told they've been frowned upon, but I don't know. Where is the relationship between roofers and skylights these days?
I think you're always going to have some roofing companies that are just like, we just want to put a roof on. We don't want to worry about anything else, skylights, and probably maybe more so on the residential side. But I can just say for sure on the commercial side, daylighting is very important. And contractors are doing it constantly because contractors are looking at, like you said, these big metal buildings, these big data centers, the Amazons, but even more so like the retail ones where retail wants to have daylighting and they want to be able to bring it in. It saves them on energy, it saves them on cost. And so the key to really when you hear contractors aren't wild about skylights, there's only two reasons. Well, not there's more, Joe, but I'll put out two. One is they can be dangerous. They can be dangerous when you're re-roofing. There's a safety element. And so you need to have really strong safety programs, and the big contractors and the good contractors do. And so that eliminates that big concern with skylights. The
I have
second
to
one is,
stop you right there before you go on.
yeah,
Explain the safety. Is it just that there's a hole in the roof that people could fall through?
they just fall
Yeah.
through.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I know. But that has been a huge cause of safety and some terrible accidents
Oh,
in the
goodness.
roofing industry because people haven't fenced them correctly. They haven't put the right safety in place. It's not the skylight's fault. It's the
Right.
people who haven't prepped the roof correctly
Right.
to be re-roofed or if it's new construction. And so you hear people when we're in our safety talks, you hear about that all the time. Correct? How to protect against people falling through skylights.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. The second thing is it's going to leak. And so people are like, we don't want to put a skylight in because it has problems with, leaks down the road. But good contractors know how to flash and to install skylights correctly. And it's a great differentiator for their business. It's also an opportunity to, add to the overall sale of the roof. So commercially, for sure. I mean, this is something that commercial roofing contractors have no issues with skylights that I've heard. I
Okay.
think on the residential side, on steep slopes, sometimes that's a little bit trickier. So,
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes a whole lot of sense. Well, I'm glad to see where we are with commercial. There's a very strong correlation between natural light and sales. So you mentioned retail. There's, one of the reasons is that they want skylights in retail is because it drives up sales for sure, and productivity in manufacturing situations, non schools, and the metal
schools.
building world has
And
has
skylights are
swum upstream
so
to
cool
schools.
with all the new architecture, the new designs, the spans that they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just bringing so much I think, to energy because of all the daylighting and the solar and everything else that comes in with it. So I know not everybody agrees with that, but to me, it seems to offer, I mean, beyond architectural design, it also offers great energy.
Totally. I agree 100%. Let's talk about coatings. I don't know much about the world of coatings, so I'm going to educate myself, and I'm guessing that there's some people like me who are maybe not quite as ignorant, but maybe just a little bit ignorant to the world of coatings. Help us understand where coatings come into the world of construction.
Yeah. So for Coatings Coffee Shop, we focus on protective coatings. So this is not going to be your paint. You never know. Someday we might have a painter's coffee shop. But right now, coatings is all about protective coatings. So roof coatings. We are having a revolution of roof coatings right now because of the restoration. Goes back again to you're talking about the environment. Instead of tearing off old roofs and putting them into landfills, we are coating them. And we have some amazing coating manufacturers out there who are providing solid solutions for roof restoration. And that is really their focus. It's restoring that roof and not having it go into a landfill. We also, on Coatings Coffee Shop, talk about coatings for parking garages, coating waterproofing. So that's going to be your green roofs or your below grade. We really look at those types of coatings and the contractors who install them. So you may have a contractor who's doing below grade maybe waterproofing, and then they're also going to go and they're going to waterproof the parking garage. They may even be up on the roof. Usually the roof and the ground, different contractors, but you never know. And so we really focus on all of those contractors. Another one is sports surfaces. So when you think about sports surfaces outside, tennis courts or running, on the roof and on the ground, those are special surfaces that are protective, meant exactly for a certain sport and how they need to be. And with the growth of pickleball and all of the different
Right.
outside sporting events, that is a growing industry. So those are the contractors that we help provide information to, bring them in. We call our sites where the industries meet. So we try to bring the manufacturers, the distributors, the contractors all together to really talk about, what's happening in parking garages? What's happening up on the roof? Why are we restoring them instead of tearing them off? Those kind of conversations are happening pretty much every day.
Well, restoration versus complete replacement is, that's a very strong value proposition these days. So,
Yes, it's
uh,
huge.
yeah, you're
And
very well positioned.
it can go for a long time, Joe. I mean, you can do a roof restoration and 5 years do a single recoat and it extends that warranty. And you can do that until, the only problem is if you ever have any problems with moisture in the roof. If there's moisture in the roof, that's, unless you can dry it out and replace those areas with the insulation and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to do a roof restoration. And if that, down the road, if it's not, the installations aren't right, you have to watch for that because that's the biggest cause of not being able to, of needing to tear off, basically.
Okay. Now, these are the days of the EPD and the life cycle analysis. Are there any issues in the coding world with regards to components that have any sort of long-term implications that you don't want to end up in a landfill, etc.? Is that a factor you dealt with in the industry?
Yeah, when I was working for Carlisle, we did a lot with along that area of VOCs. And that was 20 years ago.
Yep.
And at that point, it was, oh, I'm not sure. VOCs, do we really need to change it? What's the problem? Today, every manufacturer is out with low VOCs to no VOCs in their either their coatings, even their adhesives to put new roofs, single ply roofs down. And so VOCs has definitely become one of those things that has been corrected and for the environment works. Now, old roofs being torn off and going into landfills, you got things like asbestos. You have some, I mean, asbestos is probably the biggest one, a little bit lead, those kind of things that contractors are having to watch for. And then there's special abatement that goes along with that. But overall, the industry has really worked hard on bringing down the smell factor. So, in the old days, you could smell a roof being put on from miles away. Now that's just not the case. Also, how the installation is, so it's quiet. And then, of course, with coatings, that just is something that has really taken the whole to be able to restore a roof makes the intrusion of that roofing project so much less.
Right. Are there any sort of toxins, like we talked about VOCs specifically, but like any toxins that find their way into the landfill? And, the example that's going through my head is like a polycarbonate glazing. They have to deal with phenol A, bisphenol A. Is there anything equivalent in the coatings world?
I don't think so. I'm kind of thinking through it, not really. And it's so regulated that, which is good. I
Yep.
mean, but it is so regulated that most of the manufacturers, they know exactly. I attend the Roof Coating Manufacturers Association.
Yep.
I end up, Joe, at a lot of meetings, but they are way ahead of this and they are constantly working to make sure, how's it work? Where do they really making sure they're environmentally correct, that they're following the regulations? But then also, looking at things like a big one right now in coatings is insurance. In the insurance companies overall in construction and roofing are taking a strong point on saying things that they want and they don't want. And sometimes they don't have all the information. And so you see these associations really reaching out and trying to work with insurance companies to say, hey, this is a good solution. This is environmentally a great solution and it is durable. Let's talk through that. And that's some of the things that in the coatings world that they're working on right now, too, especially in Florida.
Okay. Why Florida especially?
Just some regulations that have come down from the insurance companies because of hurricanes and
Right.
winds of not recoating, not restoring roofs.
Ah,
And in fact, and I'm going to say I'm not an expert on this, but you can read all about it on Roofers Coffee Shop. But there have been times when they're trying to save money, right? Because so many roofs are getting blown off. So Dade County does an amazing job on the level of security and the wind uplift. But as they're trying to kind of figure this out with all the extreme weather that we're having, sometimes the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. And we have they're looking at things saying, well, that's not going to work. But it is. And so a lot of that testing is going on to prove that this is a good solution. It has been tested, it's passed Dade, and it should be okay. But that's a conversation that has to happen pretty much ongoing because everybody's looking for solutions for extreme weather.
Yeah, and that's not going to back off anytime soon for sure.
No.
All right, I want to change gears completely now. I want to
Okay.
talk about podcasting. I get to talk to a fellow podcast host. How do you like the gig, the podcasting side of your role?
I love it.
Yeah, what's your
I
favorite
have
part?
to say. And all of us do. Karen, Megan, and I, and we have even more people who are going to be coming up and doing podcasts and who do videos. We do live videos at the shows. We have a soundstage at a number of our big trade shows. And I know the reason that I love it so much is because we get to tell stories. And we get to tell stories of some of the most awesome people, I think, are the people who have come to work in the trades, whether they're manufacturers, distributors, contractors, consultants, architects, it doesn't matter. They love building the built environment, and they bring such a wealth of information and just a history. And I think probably one of my favorite things are in the trades, you have so many businesses that are family, that are generational. And so you have these generational families out there who have passed down from one generation to the next, these amazing construction companies. And I love hearing their stories, about how grandpa started it, where they're at today. And so we try to really highlight and bring that out a lot. And I'm just naturally inquisitive like you are. I think that's one of the tricks. You have to actually be kind of really curious.
Oh, I agree entirely. Yeah, and I'm always baffled by the world around me. So every opportunity to to learn
Me
more
too.
about it is a wonderful thing. Have you had any really surprising moments as a podcaster where you were kind of knocked sideways and weren't really sure what to say next, or it was just so exciting and happy that you thought, "Oh my goodness, I'll remember this moment forever." One or two that really.
Yeah. I think the biggest one that has really influenced me was when we launched Coffee Conversations in 2020. And we launched it in direct response to COVID. We knew we needed a place for the industry to come together since we wouldn't be able to go to trade shows or do any of those normal meetings that we did. And we launched Coffee Conversations, which is an hour-long conversation with a panel, with interactions and people calling in. So it's a little bit different than a podcast. But what came out of that, Joe, was so amazing. It's just the industry coming together and being there and asking questions and taking on topics like labor shortage and material supply chain problems and COVID and talking together. That, I think, really blew my mind. And that was the change to a total digital world. I
Yeah,
mean, where we all were talking about it, right?
yeah.
I've been doing this for a while, but that 2020 was really the launching point of saying we can still be together digitally. And so I think that was definitely one of my biggest ones. And on Roofing Road Trips, which is our first podcast, I just have to say our first podcast with Reed Ribble, who was the CEO of the NRCA, and he was also a congressman out of Wisconsin. I had him back numerous times, and he was always just one of those people who would I'd come away and I'd go, wow, aha, okay.
Right.
And so, yeah. But we've really always had incredibly positive podcasts and our conversations, our videos overall, because we are dedicated to shining a positive light. And so we don't go down the trail of, the news, bad news, and those kind of things.
Right.
We are very much focused on the positive, and that's always made it a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. I love that for sure. Do you see a fourth coffee shop and maybe fourth podcast in your future? Is that I can see the look in your eye. That's definitely on your
Well,
agenda.
we did just launch a new podcast, which we're very excited about. It comes out once a month and it's called Contractor Outlook Newscast.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different. And we are actually bringing experts from outside the construction industries to visit with us. And this was really inspired by a lot of these meetings that we go to. There's always guest speakers, right? Inspirational speakers, business speakers, economists, all of that. And we wanted to bring what I was hearing and what a lot of my team members, as they're going to these meetings, are hearing from outside the industry in. And so we've already done an episode on weather with a meteorologist. We've had a couple economists, an AI specialist. We're going to be visiting with this amazing speaker, Rini, and who wrote a book called Head Trash. And it's about the mental and how in business. So we're bringing those kind of topics to our contractors across all platforms. So roofers, metal, and coatings, and really kind of bringing more of that business and what's happening out there that you need to be aware of for your business to grow. So that's our newest one that just came out. And yeah, new coffee shops, never know what might happen in 2025. We're always looking because we see a lot of industries out there that we feel a light needs to be shined on. And so we want to be a part of that.
Very cool. Very cool, for sure. All right. There's a question that I ask in every single episode, and I'm going to ask you. I normally tell people we're going to do something different. This is I normally tell people to answer the question from whatever perspective they like. But for you, I'm going to put a little constraint on it. I'm going to say,
Okay.
I want you to answer this question from the perspective of the industries that you represent, especially the metal world. What makes a great building?
Ooh, I like this question a lot. Um, we're doing a lot of work right now in the metal world with barndominiums, metal buildings, and as they're the barndominium phase. And of course, we work with so many different erectors and exterior contractors with the buildings. But what I think makes a building great is, and this is going to sound, but it needs to breathe and live. And that's a big part of it. So lots of light, lots of design that makes sense, sustainable materials. I mean, some of the metal siding that has come out with the new board and batten, I mean, so beautiful. The roofs are so durable and sustainable against all types of weathers. And that's really, I mean, just from the metal side of it, that's why you're seeing the industry grow so much, is because it's very adaptable, it's performance, and it's durable long term. And so I think you need all of those factors to make a great building. And then just bring in the light, have a lot of doors that can open to the world. And of course, energy and all of the other things that go with it. But I think a great building is one that lives and breathes the people within it and really creates this beautiful living experience.
I love that. I love that. All right. Before we wrap up, Heidi, do you have anything else that you'd like to promote? Any exciting news that you want to share while we're chatting?
I would love to invite everybody, like I said, our newest podcast, Contractor Outlook Newscast. You can find us on YouTube under Roofers Coffee Shop, Coatings Coffee Shop, and Metal Coffee Shop. But you can also find us on all of the podcast channels to be able to, if you go to Roofers Coffee Shop, you're going to find roofing road trips and stories from the roof, Contractor Outlook, and like we talked about with the metal and the coatings, just kind of being a part of that community and just coming in, checking us out. All of our coffee conversations are recorded. And this is probably the one thing, Joe, I'd leave you with is we really believe in generational learning. So we have an initiative, it's called RLW, Read, Listen, Watch. And pretty much everything we do, you can either read it, you can listen to it, or you can watch it. And we feel that is inclusive of all types of learning styles and how people want to digest their information. So you can find us wherever, on the website, podcast, social media, you name it, YouTube. Love you to have people subscribe to us on YouTube.
Wonderful. Heidi, I can't thank you enough. That was so much fun. And, I always love talking to people who are in the media in any way because it's your job to keep your finger on the pulse, right?
We
So
try.
you get a really good broader insight into what's happening in the industry. So I'm so glad I had you here today. Plus, it was just fun talking to you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Joe. I was honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Better Buildings for Humans. For more information on the world's best light diffusing and highly insulating glass glazing, please visit advancedglazings.com.